The lockbox was colder than the attic floor beneath it, slick with condensation, as if it had just been pulled from deep, wet soil. Eli Carter's fingers trembled as he pried it open, the rust flaking like old scabs. Inside lay a cracked compass, a brittle newspaper clipping, and a map scrawled with ink that smelled faintly metallic coppery, like old blood. A charred matchbook fell out, landing spine up. "Welcome to Verlo Hollow," it read, the gold lettering flicking off like ash. A strange hum filled the air so soft it might have been inside Eli's own head, but it was there, pulsing like a second heartbeat. He unfolded the map. No roads, no markers, just coordinates and a circle drawn around a clearing in northern Pennsylvania. As he stared, the floor creaked beneath him, not from his weight, but from something shifting below. A sour, moldy odor wafted up, mixed with the sharp sting of ozone, like air before a lightning strike. He gagged, tasting something bitter bile, maybe, or something worse. When he touched the compass, a flash of something new. Someone flooded his vision, pale figures dancing in flame, their mouths sewn shut, eyes wide with ecstasy or terror. One looked directly at him. He staggered back, breath shallow. His mind stuttered. These weren't just hallucinations. They were memories. The matchbook snapped shut on its own. He told himself he imagined that. He had to. In the old newspaper, the article mentioned a ritual. Locals in the 1800s buried black salt and horse bones around the village perimeter to keep the fire breathers in. They'd failed. The fires didn't consume, they preserved. For a moment, all was still. The air cleared. Nausea faded. Relief. But then, every light in the attic flickered and went out. Something breathed behind him, and then, from the floorboards, whisper in his uncle's voice, "You're already there, Eli." Verlo Hollow wasn't on any map Eli checked. Not Google, not archived state records, not even topographical surveys. Still, the coordinates were real. K followed them north through winding dirt roads. The GPS signal dying 3 miles before the final turn. The trees grew denser there, limbs twisted unnaturally as if recoiling from something buried deep beneath the earth. A heavy silence swallowed the woods, broken only by the crunch of his boots on frostbitten leaves and the occasional snap of a branch behind him. He never saw who or what broke them. The village sat in a sunken clearing, fog pooled like breath. Around its edges, every house was intact, but too intact. Its windows without a speck of dust, its front doors ajar, as if left for someone expected back any second. Fires still crackled faintly in stone hearths, but there was no warmth. Eli entered one of the homes. The air inside was thick with the scent of decaying herbs, copper, and old milk. The floorboards were soft not from rot, but from something pulsing beneath them. He brushed the wall. It was damp and cold, like skin. On the mantel sat a photograph, in a warped wooden frame. 12 villagers stood in a circle, faces blurred beyond recognition, except one. A young woman with pitch black eyes carved into the photo's back. She walks between the sparks. He touched it and gagged. Taste of copper filled his mouth. Blood, no dash hash. He stumbled out of the house, shaking, eyes darting. He whispered to himself over and over, "It's just a story, just a ghost town." Then the trees moaned, long and low, like wind through a corpse's throat. Suddenly, the sky cleared. Sunlight pierced the gloom. A leaf bloomed a till. He looked down. The grass was bleeding, and his shadow had disappeared. Eli stumbled back from the bloodied grass, chest heaving, bile rising in his throat. But when he blinked again, the grass was normal, green, damp with dew, not crimson. Just my nerves, he thought, trying to laugh. It came out brittle and hollow. He crouched, touched a blade of grass. No stain, no blood. I imagined it. The sun, pale and cold as bone, hung low above the treetops, not moving, frozen. Wind whistled between buildings, though no branches stirred. A door creaked shut somewhere behind him, slow and deliberate. He spun, heart punching his ribs. Nothing. Silence. And then, a faint, clicking like teeth tapping glass. It came from the well at the center of the village. He approached. Each step felt heavier than the last. The scent thickened burnt metal, spoiled earth, and something older, something feral. He leaned over the moss-covered edge. Black water reflected the sky perfectly. No ripples, no movement, till it began to smile back at him. His reflection, grinning, out stitched shut, eyes leaking black tears. He reeled back, slamming into the well's stone base. Cold, wet, sticky. His hands came away dark, smelling of soot and iron. He wiped them on his shirt, already stained. His head throbbed sharp stabs behind the eyes. He shook it off. Hallucination. Maybe dehydration. He'd skipped breakfast. That had to be it. On a nearby porch, he spotted a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. Inside, small bones tied with twine, a candle made of animal fat, and a journal page. They cannot cross salt, nor stand before a mirrored fire. But if they take your name, you are already theirs. Local superstition, old wives' nonsense, he muttered, forcing a smile. A wind passed. For a moment, clarity returned. Light warmed his face. Then his reflection in the well whispered his name, Kay, and licked its lips. Eli holed up in what used to be a schoolhouse desk, still aligned, chalk, still scribbled with equations no one would ever solve. Dust floated thick in the air, but it wasn't the kind that settled peacefully. It moved, pulsing like breath. Every few minutes, he thought he heard a child giggle from the far corner. When he turned to look, the sound stopped, but the chalk had shifted. A name was being written slowly, line by line. Ely. He forced himself to focus, rifling through drawers, overturned crates, cracked cabinets. K. Beneath a false floorboard, he found a bundle of pages wrapped in wax cloth. The ink bled, but the writing remained legible counts, written by Reverend Amos Whitaker in 1871. We summoned fire to banish winter, but it spoke back. It offered warmth, exchanged for silence. Another page, dated weeks later. We, nailed, shut their mouths. We thought if they could not chant, they could not return. We were wrong. Each entry dripped with desperation. The villagers had performed a ritual candlelight, cants, in a borrowed tunnel, a binding circle made from black salt and dog bones. It worked for 3 days. Then came the voices inside their heads, behind their eyes. Then came the vanishings. The fire never went out. Eli's mind was unraveling. The journal pulsed in his hands like a heartbeat. He tasted copper every time he turned a page. Blood. No. Memory. His memory, but older, as if the pages were riding through him. He looked up. The chalkboard now read, "You called her." Sighed. The sun finally moved, an inch down. The air felt thinner. The scent of burning hair drifted in, acrid and suffocating. For a second, all was still. Then the schoolhouse walls began to bleed ink, as in every window reflected, not him but her. Asterisk. Eli couldn't breathe. The windows wept ink, thick and slow. Spelling symbols he'd seen in the Reverend's journal sigils, meant to bind, not to summon. He stumbled backward into a desk, splinters stabbing his palm. The floor shuddered beneath him like something vast, turned over in its sleep. And then silence. Not peace. Absence. Even the buzzing in his ears stopped. For the first time in hours, he heard nothing. Not wind, not whispers, not even his own heartbeat. That's when she spoke, not aloud inside. A voice smooth as honey, thick with rot. You read the words. You peeled the seal. He opened the mouth. He screamed. But the sound was swallowed before it left his throat. His lips tingled as if sewn together by invisible thread. His reflection in the inky windows still smiled, blinking out of sync with him. He clutched his head, nails digging deep. Her voice laughed, low and wet. Kay gave me their silence. You offer me yours. Suddenly, a lull. The windows cleared. The bleeding walls dried. For a moment, sunlight filtered through the cracked ceiling. Eli collapsed to his knees, panting. Maybe it's over, he thought. Maybe acknowledging her was enough. He even laughed too loud, too high. Then came the smell. Copper, sulfur, burnt teeth. A single high-pitched giggle echoed from behind the teacher's desk. He forced himself to look. Sitting there was a child-sized, figure-stitched burlap face, hollow eyes, and an open mouth where no mouth should be. From it oozed black threads, writhing, stretching, reaching toward him. His skin crawled. Cold sweat soaked him. He tried to move his legs, refused. He blinked. The figure was gone, but the black threads still slithered across the floor toward him. Somewhere deep in his skull, a second heartbeat had begun. Eli ran, not toward safety. He no longer believed in such a thing, but into what remained of the village church. Its steeple leaned as if ashamed, and the heavy oak doors resisted his touch like a warning. Inside, the air was dense with mold, incense, and something coppery that clung to his tongue like rusted nails. The pews were overturned, hymnals shredded. A cold draft slithered across the floor, whispering like lips pressed to his ear. At the altar lay a mound of waxy, half-burnt candles, some still faintly warm. Above them, crucifixes had been turned upside down, black ropes tied tightly around their necks. Eli stepped closer, boots crunching on brittle pages. He knelt and found a torn Bible, pages fused with blood and something thicker. It's called. In panicked script, we bound her to the route, fed her silence. She listens through fire. She waits below. He gagged. The bile rose fast, bitter and metallic. Then the floor shifted beneath him with a groan like breaking bones, a trapdoor partially, covered by melted wax and broken glass. He hesitated. Thing lifted it. The pit below reeked of decay and damp ash. Bones lined the walls, some animal, some not. At the center sat a stone basin filled with congealed blood, black and still. On the walls, painted in soot and what looked like burnt fingernail scratches, was her name, Amiriel. A sudden warmth flushed over him, like standing too close to a bonfire. For a moment, he felt calm. The shadows stopped shifting. The silence returned. Then the bones began to breathe. Eli's vision swam. He felt something split behind his eyes. Whispers curled around him. You found the root. Now bleed into it. He blinked in. The blood in the basin blinked back. Asterisk. Eli stumbled back from the basin. Dry, heaving, vile, sharp, and acidic on his tongue. The pit pulsed around him like a living wound. Cold stone bled through his jeans as he crawled, hands trembling. Every bone embedded in the walls seemed to hum no unawful resonance, like teeth grinding in the dark. The smell of scorched flesh and wet copper thickened, coating his throat. He wiped his mouth, and the blood on his sleeve wasn't his. Then, he saw it beneath layers of soot on the far wall. A fresco had survived the fire. He lit his phone. The light flickered erratically, but it was enough. It showed a woman with eyes gouged out, mouth sewn shut, standing in a circle of kneeling villagers. She held a flaming book. Above her, the symbol from the journal, etched in gold. Underneath, silence was her wound. Sound is her weapon. Eli blinked, then gasped. The fresco moved. Slowly, deliberately, the stitched mouth of the painted woman began to unravel. Huh. A voice flooded his skull, high and many-layered. They thought silence could contain me. They were wrong. They fed me children. I birthed screams. His mind reeled. This wasn't a ghost, it was something older, pre-Christian, pre-language, a curse born of sound. Denied and fire endured. The villagers hadn't vanished. They had been offered, one by one. For a breathless moment, the pit was quiet. The whispers. No shifting shadows, stillness. Then the walls began to drip black fluid, thick and warm, sliding down from the bone shelves and forming words. The seal is broken. The root drinks again. Eli turned to run, but the trapdoor above had vanished, and from below, the basin gurgled like something inside it had started laughing. The pit groaned as the air thickened, pressing against Eli's chest like unseen hands. Every breath came ragged and metallic, laced with the taste of old blood and smoke. The walls pulsated, slick with tire-like ichor that dripped rhythmically, as if the church itself had a heartbeat. Somewhere above, the warped beams creaked and snapped in protest. Eli screamed, but the sound vanished, swallowed by the darkness, like it had never existed. The blood in the basin boiled. He clutched the edge of the stone, its cold surface biting into his skin. A voice tore through his skull, not spoken, but injected straight into thought. Open your mouth, let me in. Bit his tongue until he tasted copper. Didn't help. From the depths of the basin, something rose, something boneless and wet. A coil of ash and shadow, shaped vaguely like a woman, her eyes pits of smoldering embers. The air burned and froze all at once. The smell of decay thickened to nausea. Eli's knees buckled as visions hit him like a hammer in ancient forest, long burned to black ash. Rituals performed with firebrands and screaming mouths. Villagers cutting out their own tongues as an offering to E. Marielle, the queen of voiceless flame. They had tried everything, incantations, salt, sacrifice, but it had only delayed her. And now Eli was the final key, the one who heard. He pressed against the wall, his nails scraping over something soft, flesh. The stone had turned to flesh, and it was breathing. Then silence. The entity retreated, folding in on itself like smoke sucked back into a chimney. Eli collapsed, sobbing. Maybe it was gone. Then the church began to sing. A choir of 1,000 mutilated voices off key, blood choked and rising from the walls. And Eli's mouth opened on its own. Eli staggered outside the chapel, the door splintering behind him with a sound like ribs breaking. His breath steamed in the night air despite the heat that clung to his skin. Heat, not a fire, but a fever. The sky above had turned a deep rust color, clouds swirling in unnatural spirals. His ears rang with fading echoes of the chorus, though no sound reached the world beyond the village. The silence was absolute, unholy. The dirt beneath his feet pulsed faintly, warm, alive. He collapsed near the ruins of the town square, bile rising as the scent of scorched hair, copper, and festering rot burned into his sinuses. His hands trembled violently, skin mottled and blistering. He reached for his pack, pulling free the worn journal he had taken from the chapel floor. It trembled in his grip. Inside, the final pages detailed the last hours of the villagers. Had sealed the chapel after burying their children alive beneath its altar. An act of desperation demanded by the old ritual known as Corinne's silence, meant to feed A. Marielle's hunger for innocent breath. It hadn't worked. She had only grown stronger, and in the end, they had joined her willingly, one by one, their throats cut, tongues removed, forming her eternal choir. The words blurred. Eli blinked. His vision shimmered. The sky above him began to weep. Thick, black rain pelted the ground, hissing on contact. Where it landed, the earth blistered, the houses trembled, and from each rooftop came the soft shuffle of bare feet. The townspeople had returned, eyes hollow, mouths open in frozen screams. Bloodless tongues dangling. Eli cried out, but his voice cracked into nothing. His throat was raw, dry. Then he looked down. His own shadow had begun to smile. Asterisk, weeks later, the search team finally reached the village. It should have been abandoned, silent, and skeletal. But instead, the fire still burned in cracked hearts. Food sat rotting on tables. Blood congealed in bowls of ash and salt. The coppery stench clawed at their throats. Flies gathered thick at the chapel's collapsed door. But no bodies were found. It's just a single boot, torn, blackened. Eli's name scratched inside with a trembling hand. Inside the chapel, a new painting adorned the altar. It's fresh blood, depicting a man screaming, eyes gouged, shadow grinning behind him, his mouth sewn shut with human hair. The oil had not dried. One investigator swore it blinked at her. She never spoke again. The walls bled when touched. The floor whispered in dozens of voices, murmuring ancient syllables. Amriel, Amriel, breathe again. When they tried to leave, the path was gone. The forest had returned, but twisted. Its branches curved like ribs overhead. The smell of decay was heavier now, mixed with bile and something older like tombs pried open too early. One of them, Officer Javid, found Li's journal, half buried in the dirt, pages torn, ink smeared. The last entry wasn't Eli's. The handwriting was too jagged, ink too red. It simply read, "The mouths are open again." Then the static started. Radios screeched, compasses spun. Chief swore he saw movement in the tree's small, childlike silhouettes, watching, grinning, whispering. One team member walked toward them. He never returned. The remaining team set up camp in the chapel for the night, thinking they would be safe. By morning, only Jabta remained, eyes wide, his tongue missing. The fire still burned, and far away, in another village, just beginning its day, a toddler pointed toward the hills and whispered, "Mama, the singing people are coming."